If something has electricity to it, then we're less likely to be involved. Actually, we're not going to be involved. But if something is natural and eternal, then...
Book number 2 is Hop on Pop by Dr. Seuss. I think it's the first Dr. Seuss book we've ever had.
And it was the way down that revealed to me more of who I am than the way up.
The No BS Spiritual Book Club, the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to inspire your own journey of self-discovery. Here's your host, founder of the No BS Spiritual Book Club, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello. This week's guest was a competitive, money-driven financial advisor who walked away from Wall Street and ended up chasing waterfalls, talking to water, and building sacred technology to harmonize the planet. A deep thinker, master forager, rebel, and proud papa who traded stock portfolios for the flow of consciousness, Patrick Durkin is founder of the Wellness Enterprise, whose mission is to help humanity reconnect with water, not just as a resource, but as a divine intelligence. He's also the author of the book Flow, From Pure and Safe Water to Higher States of Consciousness. Patrick Durkin joins me now to explore the deeper messages behind the books that shaped him, the spiritual properties of water, the science behind structured hydration, and his bold vision to harmonize the planet, one coherent frequency at a time. If you've ever suspected there's more to water and to life than meets the eye, this one's for you. Patrick Durkin, welcome.
Thank you, Sandie. What a wonderful intro. I love that. And quite a journey.
Pardon?
It's been quite a journey.
It certainly looks that way, for sure. Yeah. In your introduction to your 10 best list, that we published on the website, you wrote that while I was self-absorbed, competitive and driven by money, the seeds were already sown to grow into a spiritual and loving man. And the best books were always there to point me in the direction of a deeper, more meaningful understanding of life. So yes, quite a journey. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I remember being a drunk in college. I was the president of the rugby team, and I was really interested in beer and rugby. And I would empty a can, and I would go to put it in the blue bin at the end of the hall. And I'm like, where's that go? And it just really, it was that seed that was just growing. Where does that go? And that ended up leading me to become the chairman of the recycling committee in my town, and to find out a lot about recycling. And that ended up leading to founding my company and a career change. And so it's been amazing to watch how the things that are of the deepest interest to me end up becoming super meaningful in their due time. And that, I think, the way that introduction came through, you helped me get a perspective on how much that's been true in my life. It's really been amazing.
So what was the pivotal moment, that flipped? That's it. I'm done with Wall Street. I'm going to water.
It was May of 2010, and I called an ambulance for myself at 1:30 in the morning because my kidneys hurt so much. And 11 days prior, my business partners had asked me to take a leave of absence. I was a mess, recovering from a divorce and really misfit to the way the stock market had changed. And I just was a misfit. I felt like doors were closing in all around me. And I was so addicted to the money, I rejected their offer. Life always gives you the easy way. And, you can be stubborn and wait for the bitter end, which I did, or you can just take the easy way. So I went out in an ambulance, and I literally never went back to work as a stockbroker again. And, I had this enormous confidence in myself that within a year I'd be making six figures and it would be in the water industry. And it turned out I went 3 years with no income. So it was a really long road, but I waited till the bitter end. And, some people can hopefully do it sooner.
Why water? What attracted you to water?
Yeah. So, it goes back to that recycling bin. And it's funny, the way I got pulled in was environmental. So I wasn't conscious enough to be interested in the energy of water. In fact, when it first showed up to me, I pushed it away as far as I could. So the way I got hooked is toward the end of my financial advisory career, Al Gore came out with An Inconvenient Truth. And I partnered with some of the local sustainability and green groups, and I bought a showing at the local theater for An Inconvenient Truth. And so it was sponsored by my partner and I's, small business. And we had 250 seats and we had 250 bums in the seats. Like, it was a packed house. And so there was enough reinforcement of the positive aspects to keep showing me where the door was open. Despite how much I resisted the change, there was always an open door. And eventually I would settle on, after all the pain, like, oh, that's the way to go. It's the only way that's easy. So I got into it through environmental. And then once I got into it, I realized if I was going to actually make a mark on the planet and have a substantial reduction in single serve containers, I would have to find out something about water that comes outside of a plastic bottle, so that people would stop wanting the bottle. And that's when the health aspects of water and the energetic aspects started revealing themselves to me.
So is it true to say that the books on your list are kind of a breadcrumb trail that helped you navigate your transformation from finance to flow?
Yeah, I think so. They taught me different aspects of self. If I don't become somebody that I can rely on, then I'm really not going anywhere. But they also taught me principles. And those principles hopefully are universal and I can rely on them. I think that the first book on my list is The Power of Now. And, I have a pretty unusual orientation to having stopped nicotine in this lifetime. Right. I was 25 and I've been chewing tobacco for 12 years and I hated it and I wanted to stop and I couldn't get myself to stop. I tried so many different ways. And what I realized was, if I was here with you, like, let's just say, like, literally, if I was still chewing and I was here with you now, I would be thinking about when the interview is going to end so that I can get away, so that I can go have this gross habit by myself. So a huge amount of my life, I wasn't present. And so learning from Eckhart Tolle and The Power of Now was something that is just deeply aligned with my life purpose. It's like, how am I going to come into alignment with universal principles if I can't get into alignment with the moment when things are happening? So, that was a massive one for me.
Yeah. So how did The Power of Now, the awareness that you gained from it, influence your connection with water?
Yeah, that's a good question. I got to be present with that one for a second. Well, some of my mentors are like Victor Schauberger, who brought us the idea of observe and comprehend nature. And it's interesting, actually, that you asked me that question today, because I'm visiting where I used to live. I was in this area for 25 years, and I went this morning, rather than busying myself with all of the normal things, I decided to just be present with our interview. And so I went to the beach, to the water, and I went to the water where I learned. And what I used to do is, I would get in I was pretty moody back in my career change and the end of my financial years. I was really a different guy. And the journey to change went through the ocean's edge quite often. So actually, the woman who introduced us, Hope Fitzgerald, I went to a workshop of Hope's and I learned the infinity wave. And she said, your homework assignment is to go talk to water. And I was like, come on, Hope, like, talk to water? Like, what are we talking about here? I have no idea what you're talking about. And I was in a mood, and I was walking a few weeks later along the boardwalk, and I remembered the homework assignment. And so I turned toward the ocean and I said, okay, I guess I'm supposed to talk to you. And I brought the question to my heart of what was on my being that day. And this wave broke from two sides and met in the middle of where I was looking. And I laughed and I was like, oh, so I'm supposed to take the middle ground? And there was like a resounding yes. And I was like, okay. And so that's where it started. And, it just continued from there. I learned to make long tone sounds at the edge of the ocean to balance my chakras and let the water lap at my feet. And then I would just get overrun with waves of creativity.
That's wonderful. So book number 2 is Hop on Pop by Dr. I think it's the first Dr. Seuss book we've ever had. This one was published in 1963. Why is this one on your list?
I have 4 kids. And I was married to a librarian. And she read the kids' books for like an hour every night. And, I was always busy doing all the me things. And then I would come in and read Hop on Pop and the other Dr. Seuss books. And, they would make me laugh. And I loved the way my kids were attentive. And it was just, it was such an intimate thing. Like to bypass Dr. Seuss on a list like this just wouldn't be fitting. It would miss an aspect of who I've been in this life. And, a huge part of who I've been has been a father. So my youngest is 20 now, and my 23-year-old works with me full time in the business, which I consider to be an extraordinary honor. And there's a bridge to kids. So now I don't have any grandchildren yet, but I'm moving in that direction. And last week I was at a conference, and there was a couple there trying to participate while having a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And so I didn't have any Dr. Seuss books to read them, but the energy of it, that connectiveness and that playfulness with words, I kept scooping the 3-year-old off and taking him into nature and playing with him.
You just answered my second question there, because I was going to say that, Dr. Seuss's books are very whimsical, but there's a deeper intelligence in the rhythm and the simplicity of them. And I was going to ask you what they've taught you about the connection between presence, play, and spiritual practice. And we've had the answer.
Yeah. Well, you go a little further. You have such great questions, Sandie. You stretch me. I think that the mood that they set is essential for me, like the playfulness, but then also the teaching that comes through it. Very, very powerful.
Book number 3, quite different. Grits for Profiting in Bull and Bear Markets by Stan Weinstein, 1988. What's that doing on this list?
Well, I was 5 years into my career as a financial advisor, and I was very accomplished in generating good things for the firm. And the regional manager came and put his arm around me and said, I'm going to teach you how to understand the stock market. And this was the book. And that book became, I went through a most remarkable experience with the stock market. I don't think anybody does what I did. So it was in an age where we hadn't quite sped up with all the technology the way we are now. So it was just a little bit slower, and there was room for intuition. And I didn't really think that there was much on Wall Street that was being passed around that was true. It's just a bunch of news and a bunch of spewing of information. And so I honed in on 2 pieces of data: the price of a stock and the volume that it traded. How many shares did it trade today? And those were the only 2 pieces of data that were really of interest to me. And I would hypnotize myself. It was a form of hypnosis. I actually would say that I was channeling the stock market. I just didn't know it. And if you look at my health during that time period, my gut, I had irritable bowel syndrome. Like I couldn't digest food because I was digesting the stock market in my gut brain. And so that book was a marvelous reference. And whenever I would lose my way, I would read it again. And it would remind me of the principles that underlie staying in stocks for big movements up and being out of them on the movements down. And
did it teach you much about flow, intuition, higher intelligence?
Absolutely. The whole thing of what I did in the stock market for 13 years after I learned that. So I had the 5 years before and the 13 after. And the whole thing was about flowing. And, back in the day, I was surrounded by dozens of other brokers who were mostly older than me. And they would say, you have to buy and hold investments. And I would say, geez, I just bought this morning and I'm going to sell it this afternoon because I don't like the way it's responding today. And I wasn't a day trader. I was in the flow. And so I could actually tell you by 11 a.m. after I'd made my calls for the morning, whether a stock that I was buying was going to go up or go down based on which one of my clients bought it. So there were certain clients, it didn't matter how good my ideas were, they would always pick the ones that went down. And there were certain clients that would always pick the ones that go up. And if all the ones that picked the ones that go up were in the same one, I knew it. It was part of the data and the feedback, as were my colleagues. And so I learned to watch the flow of the emotions in my office and in my clients and in the world at large. It was really like a major opening for intuition.
Were you good? Were you successful?
I was phenomenal. Yeah. Yeah, the best thing I ever did at that part of my career is back in 99 and 2000, I had so many clients make so much money so fast. And I had huge fights with them because I wanted them to pay off their mortgages. I'm like, look, we just got all this money and easy come, maybe easy go. Like, let's just pay off your mortgage because then you own your house. Like, how could we go wrong? Or if somebody wanted to buy like a $60,000 car, I was like, here, let me send you the check. Go buy it. Put it in the driveway. Let it be real. And, the longest fight I actually had about that was with my mom and my stepdad. And it took them about 3 years to understand the wisdom. And we had to do it in chunks. But eventually they're like, wow, that was one of the best things we ever did. So it was a good career. I was well suited for it.
So book number 4, this is a book that is consistently in our top 10. The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, published in 1997. You kind of say this is like a coming of age book for you.
Yeah, well, if I don't keep my word, like, who am I? I mean, for myself, for others. Like, if I don't keep my word to you, Sandie, then how am I second guessing myself? I'm going to be wondering who I am. I'm going to be like trying to hold the pieces together. Life's going to show me the circumstances that go with not keeping your word. And so, when I was in my 20s, I noticed that I would lie for no reason at all. Like a lie would just, I would go to retell a story about what happened yesterday and I would change the words. And I was like, why do you do that? I was just so like amused by it. And so I went after it. And the 4 Agreements was a great way to go after it. And then, once you're keeping your word, now if you're not getting offended by people, right? If you're not taking things personally and you're letting it flow, then life gets easier, way, way easier, because you can count on yourself and you're not so offended about everything else that's going on. This is a big one.
Were there any of the 4 that you kind of had to work at a lot, Sometimes it's hard to embody some of them. There's one that always gets me.
Which one's that?
Judgment.
Yeah, I'm still working on that. I don't think any of them are easy. I mean, like, I went through that lying thing for years. I still occasionally catch myself telling something differently than the way it happened. I'm like, that's not what that person said. Why did you say it like that? Particularly like if I'm quoting somebody or representing them. But the judgment thing, Sandie, I don't know if I'll ever be free of judgment.
It's a hard one, isn't it?
But at least I can know when I'm doing it, right?
Yeah.
And so as I mature, as I ripen, hopefully like a fine wine, right? And develop some greater characters, judgment and discernment get on the table together. And we start to realize that like driving, cutting, me first edge, that judges harshly and is pretty awful energy. Discernment is a softer, more welcoming, more understanding thing. Like I can notice the differences that are going on here and I can have a preference. And so I find myself juggling discernment now more than judgment, but I still have to question sometimes whether it's different. So I appreciate you sharing that one. I think they're all tough.
They're all tough. It is such a simple premise, and it's so valuable and so powerful, and it's tough. But, it's something that we keep working at. And as you say, as long as you notice it, then that's better than not even being aware. So number 5, The Soul of Money, Transforming Your Relationship with Money and Life by Lynn Twist, published in 2003.
That one was really important. So I went from being this stockbroker who was just all stock jockey, like pile into this and do that, to founding a firm called Global Vision Advisors. And our tagline was where wealth meets well-being. So, and that firm still exists today. So, we weren't after just money. We had like a whole build your own economy corner. And that's the one that I've really gone into since I got out of the stock market, is just building my own business. I don't really like relying on the outer world in terms of the government or the structures out there to provide me with an income. I prefer just to generate my own. But when Twist taught me, and I was able to pass on to all of my clients about money being an energy, and an energy of exchange. And so I think, I had a quite unusual experience in this life, where the year I turned 30, I made $1 million, which is 8 times more than the year before. And then the year I turned 38, I was divorced and angry and lost my way in the stock market. And so I, in a couple year period, lost about 90% of my wealth. And it was the way down that revealed to me more of who I am than the way up. The way down was filled with authentic tears and understanding of life and feeling compassion and connection with more of life. The way up was just a reinforcement of my selfishness and just the emptiness. I remember as I was making all that money, I wake up with fear in my heart every day. And I remember I traded my Porsche for a used Honda minivan after the divorce so that my kids could be comfortable. And that was the day I cried a tear that I was proud of. Like, okay, you're a good papa,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Book number 6 is The Biology of Belief, Bruce Lipton, 2005.
Yeah, that's such an important work. It's, if we go through life thinking that we're victims of things and that there's nothing we can do about it, what a powerless position that is. And to be surrounded by the idea that it's the way we think and the way we act and what we believe. It's the environment around us that actually dictates how we are. That is so special. I, in my early 30s, suffered the irritable bowel syndrome for 8 years. And then I don't know when I contracted Lyme, but I had Lyme for a good amount of time before really getting aware of it and knocking that out too. So I've been through quite a bit of pain in this lifetime. And I was a pretty accomplished athlete, and I had to stop playing tennis. I won a club championship at age 31, and I did my knees in playing to win. Didn't know how to say nice shot. Just had to go get everything. And so part of what keeps me going and believing that I can generate the best health of my life now is knowing about epigenetics and knowing that it's what I think that matters. So I just spent last week at a conference learning how to take care of my spine. And I believe if I do that 40 days in a row, I will not have pain in my body. And my constrictions are pretty small right now, but they're still constrictions. And I completed day 10 this morning in front of the ocean. And so I'm 25% of the way there. And I just fully believe it now. Like, what I believe in is what carries the day. Bruce Lipton is an amazing teacher for us all.
Absolutely, yeah. Book number 7, another classic, definitely in the top 15, I think, this one. Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh, published 1995.
Yeah, it's the purity of the message that got me. Like, religion has always been so strangling and stifling for me. I didn't understand anything other than that I didn't like it. And then along comes Neil Donald Walsh with this like wide open conversation. And I got a similar feeling from Esther and Jerry and Abraham Hicks, like that a dialogue could be so wide and full and knowing that I could just like nuzzle up into it and feel safe. And so to witness his journey and be part of that dialogue was just really eye-opening for me. I think it started to open this idea. I've gone through various stages of the word God, and then source, and then creator, and then God. And now my basic philosophy on it is whatever it is for you, I'm good with. And what it is for me is more often, I use the word God, And why is because to just use source or creator for me feels like it doesn't honor the miracle of life. And when I say God, it like brings miracle in there. And so I, through that book and lots of life experiences have opened up to that this is a benevolent universe and that God is everything. And it's all conspiring for my benefit to make me the best version of myself. So I'm glad that that's my worldview now.
Yeah. Book number 8, Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman, published in 1980. I love Dan Millman's books.
Yeah, he's great. I love the like the realness of being on the ground and facing the life challenges and having that be where you meet life and God. It's not, there are a lot of people these days who are kind of very spiritual and they can feel a little detached, like they're in another world, like they're visioning a better world coming for all of us. And as much as I appreciate that they're doing that, it works for me to be on the ground doing things. So I can find God when I get my chainsaw out and go cut a tree down and, take that amazing creation and move it into a next form. And the way I use the saw and am present, I love using a chainsaw because it makes me so laser focused on the moment, right? I gotta be here now if I'm gonna use the chainsaw. And so, yeah, really appreciate staying focused like that.
Book number 9, Anastasia, The Ringing Cedars of Russia, Book 1, Vladimir Megre, 1996.
Do you know these ones?
I didn't read them all, but I'm pretty familiar with the first one.
Yeah, nice. So I had this friend, Alina, and she taught me a lot about life. And we would work on each other's yards together, and she helped me in my garden. And so this one year, she's out there, and she was all into Anastasia and these books. And she was out there in my garden, and she was holding the seeds from my beets in her hands and then in her mouth. And she was facing the sun, and it was like such a thing. And I was kind of, we'll just say, still transitioning in consciousness. And so I didn't have maybe the honor that I might have had later. But this is one of those humbling experiences. So she planted her little field of beets. It was pretty substantial size. And I planted mine. And it was laughable. It was just laughable. Her beets were up and standing and massive, and mine were sparse. And you get a little beet like this, and so those books inspired me to understand nature at a deeper level. And I think it's part of the foraging that I do now came out of those books to some degree. I think, Sandie, that about 75% of the food that I eat is directly wild from Maui. Like it comes right off the island. I don't shop for food much. I just get tortillas and oils and hot sauces and things. And that's really about it. Some teas. And so that has grown from this idea that the environment is completely tuned to us. So when I was in Portland last week, I went for a walk with my host the first morning. And on the way out, I took some nasturtium from his garden. And then when we encountered some blackberries on the walk, I had some blackberries. And it's about like informing the local environment of my DNA and receiving its messages, even if I'm not fully sensitive enough to feel them. I love that. So those books just opened up a whole world for me.
Yeah. And for many other people too. Yeah. Book number 10, Water Codes by Dr. Carly Newday, published in 2014.
Yeah, there were some great books around 2013 and 14. Another one in that time period was The Fourth Phase of Water by Dr. Gerald Pollack. And, I think that water reveals to us its next stage when we're ready to evolve. So 100 years ago, Victor Schauberger gave us the idea of this fourth phase of water, and then it took till 2013 for a definitive book declaring it from a major scientist. And so I think, since about that time period, a dozen years, that's about the time that I got into the energy of water. That was 2012. That water wants us to know it as its energetic self. And so understanding the properties that have been brought forth by Dr. Emoto is a very well-known one. But there are also some water scientists like Jacques Benveniste and Wolfgang Ludwig and Luc Montagnier. And they tend to get swept under the carpet because they're not part of the mainstream narrative. But they're opening. And as we become more aware of like that future that Tesla told us to look for of energy, frequency, and vibration, now we're opening up the world of water through energy. And Dr. Newday's book is a great example of that.
Was there one core truth in that book that resonated more than anything else for you?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that like the energy of water, I'm just looking back at my notes. I don't tend to have the best memory for the details of water, but I think that the concept of the energy of water and the sacred intelligence of water were really new for me back then. Like Dr. Pollack's book, The Fourth Phase of Water, I'm not much of a scientist. And so I was working from home in 2013 when that book came out, and it was summertime, and I remember having it, and I would go up to my bed in the afternoon and grab Dr. Pollack's book. And after a couple of weeks, I realized I was just going to put it on my chest and fall asleep. I didn't even have to go through the illusion of opening the pages. Like it would just put me to sleep so fast. So I was just tying into and coming to understand that water has all memory. Water is sacred intelligence, and that it's alive. At a micro level, H2O is just one form of water. Everybody thinks that is water. That's man-made water, but nature's water is H3O2, and there are lots of other forms of water too. And so with each of these different forms of OH minus or H3O2, etc., you end up with different properties. And so Dr. Newday's book like open that up, and it's really important.
You say that water isn't just something that we drink. It plays a critical role in awakening, healing, and remembering who we are. Say a bit more about that.
Yeah. Well, so if we take the lessons that became my book. Okay, so what I just did there, right? I just closed my eyes for a second. In the time that I closed my eyes, there was like a flow, an active flow of energy and information that looks and feels like starlight that just penetrated the top half of my head. So that's all new for me. Like I wasn't born that way. That started around 2013. And I was driving my kids to my little brother's rehearsal dinner, and we were going down through Connecticut on some roads that we're not normally on. We had an event up here, and we were going to be late. And I told the kids, like, I'm getting off this highway at the next exit. And like, Dad, what are you doing? Like, this isn't the way. Like, no, like, stay on the road. And I was like, no, I'm getting off. And I just got off. I was like, use your phones, figure out how to get over to Interstate 95 so that we can get back on track. And they did. And as they did it, they're like, oh my gosh, Dad. If we had gone past that exit, it's 4 miles to the next exit and it's completely stopped. It's all red. So we would have lost like an hour if we had gone past that ramp. So it just started to open up. And then as it started to open, it just keeps going. It's like breaking a dam. So I would go, the concepts that became my book, just like my closing my eyes right here now to answer your question, I would close my eyes and I'd feel it for a second. When I would go, didn't understand something that I was trying to understand in this industry, there weren't really a whole lot of role models for it. I would go at bedtime and I would say, okay, water, like I know there's an understanding and a clarity, a coherence that's available on this topic and I don't have it. And it's stressing me out. So I'm going to give it to you and I'm going to go to sleep. And when I wake up in the morning, just have it clear, like have me know what I need to know in the morning. And I wake up in the morning and would be like laser focus. And I'd be like running out of bed, looking for a keyboard to to type things down. So I found that navigating the river of this, the river of life, has just kept expanding and expanding it. So, I've had experiences like I'll take a mood into water. So you go to a waterfall or you go to the edge of the ocean when you're like stressed about something, and then it just dissolves. It just goes away. And I've had so many experiences like that it eventually did become a book.
How is the water working on you? How is it doing that? Is
Yeah.
it an energy or?
Well, water is infinite consciousness. Water is all memory. So, there were experiments done on water memory, and they showed no matter which part of the brain is missing, you still have memory because the memory's in the water. So consider that the Akashic records are in water, that the history of your life is in water, that the connectivity of everything is in water. And so rather than thinking of your brain as like a receiver sitting here that's holding everything, consider that your intent clarifies the water. So if you really want to know about something, then you keep pulling away at it with your intent. I really want as a being to know this, then you become knowledgeable in that thing that you wanted to know. And so I would suggest that this whole world, this whole dimension is water. Like it is the predominant thing. People have an idea of being a certain volume of water, and most people think we're like 70 or 80% water. What I notice about it is that if you hold a baby and you feel their skin and how soft they are, it makes sense that we're about 95% water when we're born. And then if you look at somebody who's lived to a really ripe old age, it makes sense that we're about 50 or 60% water. Like there's a significant pruning effect that happens over time. But that's the volume. By count, we're 99% water molecules. So almost all of your molecules are water, Sandie, and mine too, and everybody else's. And then same for the plants and the other animals and so on and so forth. So we are literally in a water matrix, and that matrix is way more sophisticated than our understanding. We have a limited viewpoint. We're not infinite in our understanding. We're infinite in our capacity, but we don't hold it all. We hold what we focus on. So I see it as the whole enchilada, like the water is carrying the message of evolution. Veda Austin has been doing some amazing work about water, and I love what she's doing because she's so playful and curious, and she's really dialoguing with water. And so what she does is she takes things and I'll give you examples. So she was at a cafe and she witnessed a schnauzer drinking out of the water bowl. And she said, well, I wonder what that water would look like. So she took a drop of the water, she took it home to her process and froze the water and pulled out of the freezer an image of the schnauzer. Like, there's the dog in the water. But the point related to what we're talking about right now is she put a sunflower seed in water, and the image that came out of the freezer was a sunflower, not the seed. And so I see water carrying the blueprint for life. Yeah. I see it is the mechanism. I've even gone so far as to consider water as God. Like I definitely think about that. Like it never complains. It always goes with the flow. It's extraordinarily resilient. You can never separate it. If you take a drop of water and separate it from its oneness, it'll evaporate and rejoin. So it has the properties that I think of as being godlike, and that's part of why I consider it as being godlike.
In your book, Flow, you explore the spiritual intelligence of water. Was there something in that exploration that really surprised you?
The whole thing. Yeah. The whole thing. I mean, the first lesson was, talking to water on Hope's suggestion. It's like, are you kidding me? That actually worked, And then when I would clarify things at night while I'm sleeping and it would be there in the morning, it just blew me away. And then, my poor kids, they're like, Dad, are you ever going to talk about anything other than water? And I was like, nope. I don't think so. Like, I really endeavored to see all of life through water for a decade. And the reinforcement was that water's infinite, that the intelligence is infinite, and that it's always there, and that it's stoking our evolution. I mean, Sandie, that's utterly mind blowing. Literally, it was part of blowing my mind. So I get a different mind to live with now. Thank God.
So your website, I mean, you offer products that restructure water. How does structured or living water differ from what comes out of the tap?
Well, if we look at Dr. Emoto's work, where he taped the word love on a water bottle, and then the crystal that he would freeze from that looked really beautiful. If he taped the word hate, the crystal would be really ugly. We learned the concept that water carries resonance. So if water carries resonance, then we have the opportunity to shift the water dialogue in this world. The primary dialogue right now is fear-based. It's about filtration or toxin removal, and the science is chemistry. So most people who I talk to, when they initiate a conversation about water, they are initiating a conversation that starts with them trying to remove something. And, I've laughed the whole time I've been in this business because I'm like, if I'm one with everything, how would I remove something from somewhere, right? Like, where would it go when it wasn't part of the oneness anymore? Just philosophically, right? So we've got this entrance point to the dialogue that comes from there. But then the truth is that water carries resonance. So if we're approaching it from fear, then we get a fear-based relationship with our water. And so I've had the opportunity to experiment over a long period of time with different ways of bringing forth a resonance with water. So I think this is part of the principle about how Hope Fitzgerald's infinity wave works, right? You bring forth this watery wave and feel love and compassion while you're doing that. And then that's what you feel. So back from 2012 to 2020, the devices that I sold were plastic. And people would ask me, hey, you started this company because you wanted to get rid of plastic bottles, and now you're selling a plastic device. Why are you doing that? And I would say, because it's the best device available in the world. And then 2020 came along, and I was part of the development of a device with copper, crystals, and minerals. Now, that's not plastic anymore. That's a whole different resonance. And then we've had that device, it's called the Aqua Energizer, for 5 years now. And about a year and a half ago, we needed to shift from making them by hand, like one guy with a blowtorch, to making 50 at a time in an oven because, eventually a business matures and you can't keep up anymore making them one at a time. So what I did when we went to do that is formed a council of people who all are attuned to and measure subtle energy in their lives. And I led them in a discussion about all the different assumptions of the device and how could we alter it to, while we were going from the beauty of handmade art to a more manufactured thing, still handmade, still hand controlled, but how could we raise the vibration of it even more? And in going through that process, which has been quite laborious and very, very detailed and nuanced, and sometimes you don't know why the people are getting a lower measurement on something, you have to go back to your assumptions and figure out, like, what have I done here? And so it's been a very, very building, steady process to the point now that I feel really confident that the Aqua Energizer carries the resonance of loving unity, because that's what I've been calling forth. Like, that's what I want my company to contribute in the world. We call ourselves the Wellness Enterprise, and our tagline is the company that loves you. We want people to have the experience of calling a company and being loved. And we want them to have products that bring them into their more loving nature and wake up. This is my big dream, is that we fill people with living water and it wakes up their alignment with their mission and purpose for their life. That's why I do what I do, because if I can help others be who they are here to be, then collectively we can form the best world that we can. And I think that's a lot better than the one we have now.
So is this a matter of taking, an intention for something and imprinting the water with that intention, but you're doing it on a larger scale than just somebody sticking nice words like love on the side of their bottle. So you're doing it at a bigger scale and in a more powerful way?
Perhaps more refined. One of the things that I had as a question mark when I was experimenting with Emoto's suggestion to put love on my bottle is like, now, which love is this? Is this the love that some pop singer is singing about? Is this the love that I thought I had with my wife? Is this the love I have for my dog or my children? That word has an enormous amount of variation to it. And so for me, there's been an attunement to try to go past myself to universal law or natural principles. And what I've discovered there is sacred geometry. And what I've discovered there is sciences like biogeometry, where the intention of those, sacred geometry to me is the language of creator. And we don't really get any say about that. That's just how creator creates. Like you and I are exchanging words in English, and we have a way of doing that with grammar and agreements that we've made that help us understand each other to some degree. But for creator, it just is sacred geometry. It's like math becomes shapes and shapes become matter. That's just how it works. So I don't think there's a lot of arguing about that one. And so there are just certain ratios that work to evoke the sacred. And we have those ratios at work. So when we change the length of something or the width of something, the size of something, then we have to adapt everything else to keep consistent ratios. So like the spheres inside of our devices, we had to have a tool made to make them the size that we want, right? It couldn't just be the standard sizes that everybody else has for different marbles, because that wouldn't accomplish what we were looking to do. So I think that there's been a refinement and a tuning process for me to understand what is it that underlies why I feel so good when I go to a waterfall. What is it that feels so good when I walk on the beach? What are the languages of that, and how do we bring that in? So when we source our crystals and we put them through the mail, getting them to our manufacturing facility after we've harmonized them right to right shape and size and quality, we then put them into a clearing process. And the clearing process involves not only the shelves that they're on, but then the space around the shelves has also been. So we are very intentionally doing our best to bring nature's creation through us, even though it's a man-made creation, to have it be as aligned as possible. So I don't think that's the same as a normal human choosing a word. But it's the same principle. It's the principle of resonance.
There are a lot of things that have emerged over the last, 20 years, few decades, bioresonance technology. People can, the FLFE, where they can transmit frequencies, to your phone, to your home. It's very challenging to say, well, how can I prove that this is working? We can't see it. I know we can't see electricity, but we know the effects of it. So we do have kind of, a gauge there. But how can we gauge that the water, that the devices that you're creating are actually really having an effect?
Yeah, that's a great concept. I mean, imagine that you decide you're going to be an expert at this in the world and that you're going to write a book about it. It's like, what am I going to do? And that's where I just turn to prayer. Okay, water, I don't understand. Please clarify me. But over the years, I've been practicing this for a dozen years now, and I've touched tens of thousands of people. And I have some answers now that are different than I would have had a decade ago. A decade ago, I would have tried to participate in validating myself through a laboratory. And I would have tried to find some people that have science to do the measurements. And I've been involved with enough of those type of people now, and I've seen behind the scenes with different devices and how science is used and how it's not used. And I don't really like participating in that anymore because most of it is built by corporations to deceive. It's not really built to explore truth. I recently sent a sample device to somebody to do something called gas discharge visualization teaching. And I had a before testing phone call with the practitioner. And I said, okay, I want to be really clear to you what I want. She's like, yeah, I know. You want a before picture that shows it's awful, and then your technology, and an after picture that shows it's perfect. And I said, no. She said, well, what do you want? I said, I want the truth. She's like, what? Like, I want the truth. I want to know how it works. And I want to know if it makes a difference and is measurable with your technology. So I've been doing that for quite some time. And so I've brought a lot of people to me. I'm a magnet for that. And so I think crowdsourcing is really, really important. It's if I didn't see my products change my clients' lives, I would do something else with my life force. There's no reason to be in a business for money. I already did that. I know how that ends. So I think, like, boldly hanging our shingle out and telling you we are the company that loves you, and then let people show up and tell us what they think that means to them. And most of the people just kind of go with the flow, and they're like, they feel respected and harmonized, a good vibe. But some people come at me pretty hard, that's not loving. I'm like, okay, well, like, let's get at what would be loving. Like, let's go through this together. That's part of how I grow and keep expanding in my mission. If you're bold enough to hang that shingle out, you better be ready to grow. So I think that we have to be really careful in this world with looking at the agendas of where people come from. And knowing that because of the way we've been structured to think, most of us will sell some part of ourselves out to get some more money for ourselves. And so we have to be aware of where information comes from in the dialogue. So my favorite place for the answer to come from for you is you. The most powerful scientific instrument in the world for you to know what's right for you is you. Yeah. Now, I'm an amazing source of questions because I've talked to tens of thousands of people like you. So when somebody struggles with something, I'm like, well, have you thought about this? And they're like, no, like I never would have thought about it that way. So I teach people where to look to realize that the living water is living them, that they are awakening. And I can help them in their internal and external environments. So we can do it with plants, or we can do it with the inside of your cheeks. Like, I've been drinking steadily during our call today. And I can feel, now that I put my focus on it for 2 seconds, that the inside of my cheeks are still cascading wet, which means that I've been keeping up with my hydrating need, despite that speaking this much is dehydrating.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm on par. But more important to me, like, if you look at my book, right, it's called Flow, but from pure and safe water, that's where people are, to higher states of consciousness. That's where I want to go. And I think some other people want to go with me there too. So when we get the breakthroughs in the higher states of consciousness and connect it to the water, now we got everything. So for me, drinking structured water has opened my third eye and given me access to all that is, such that I feel confident that anything I want to focus on will come to me. Anything. So all the answers are within. They're within the water, and it happens through focus. That's my answer for it. So the best way to validate you and that these things are working is you. And then the next best is crowdsourcing it. And so we've been doing sometimes weekly and sometimes monthly Zooms for most of the last 13 years. And we tend to have a couple dozen people come. And if you watch the threads of our community, you will hear in their own voices how they are engaged in these topics and how they are experiencing flow in their lives. That's how I know I'm doing the right work. So I get that there's a lot of bad information out there, motivated by people who are intending to be good. And I thank goodness for everyone who's bringing attention to energetics in life and to going more. We just have to find compassion for those who are a little bit misoriented. And you just find the resonance of what's right for you. I think that's why our company, I often marvel at it. Like, why don't we ever get all the orders from 1 month in 1 minute? Like, why don't they just all come at once? And they never do. There's like a rhythm. So we're on a rhythm to grow this company and touch the world with living energies and structured water. And it seems to be carried at a pace that we don't control. So we just keep rolling with it. And, we invite people to come study with us and experience us. But as long as you're experiencing living water and that's what you're asking for focus on, you're in the right direction.
You have a product called the Cosmic Tower, which sounds like something, from a sci-fi novel, but it's very real. So tell me a little bit about it. Is this the sort of thing that people would purchase if they want this structured water in their lives, in their home?
Yeah, absolutely. So, from a sacred geometry perspective, I lived inside the vortex for 10 years. And then water came along and put the torus spin on top of it. Now, for those who know sacred geometry, you already know this, but the center of a torus is a vortex. So in that decade, I lived the vortex. I didn't even know that there was another shape bigger that was going on around the outside. And then in it came. So this torus field generator called the Cosmic Tower, it's the product of a German mechanical engineer named Harald Thiers. He spent 15 years refining it. And his basic premise was that I'm not well and I would like to be well. And he discovered it was the energy fields that he was living in that would cause him to feel well. And so eventually he manifested a combination of maple wood with glass and water collected from healing springs and crystals. And that the sacred geometry and the measurements, the mathematics of that creates a toroidal field, a palpable toroidal field. And so instead of just structuring the water with something literal that the water goes down the vortex, like at your sink or on your whole house pipe, this is something that sits passively in your house and creates an energy field. And one of our allies at the company, he became an ally by buying every product that I recommended for 10 years. And he's a biohacker. Now he calls himself a researcher. His name's Theo Lucier. And Theo, one of his clients, was getting one of these cosmic towers, and she already had the FLFE. And so he did before and after measurements using Bovis meter and Lectra antenna and other tools that he uses, biogeometry as well. And he discovered that bringing a cosmic tower into her space was many times more powerful than the FLFE. And so we've learned some principles over time from people like this. We've learned that if something has electricity to it, then we're less likely to be involved. Actually, we're not going to be involved. But if something is natural and eternal, then we are. And so cosmic towers are natural and eternal, and they create a measurable field effect that causes people to feel harmony. So the way we get to a new world order isn't by fighting the old world order. That would exhaust us and we wouldn't get anywhere. We just create something better and we just live into that and let that become stronger. So the cosmic tower creates a harmonic energy field for people to live in.
So do you envision creating a miniaturized version that people can carry around with?
I think it's possible. It would have to cross over into being waterless to be miniaturized or have very, very little water. And so at this time, with our understandings, we are sticking with the water. But as you can tell by my answer, we've thought about it. And we would like to go in that direction. There are companies that make wearable technologies, and people choose to put a lot of different things on their body. And those are all beautiful. Those are all going in the same direction. Our core right now is that we understand spaces more than the individual field. We do have a mini that is about this big, so 8 or 9 inches. And it weighs about a pound, and it will fit in a purse and people can take it. So there is a version of it. And that's still not quite miniaturized.
Okay. We're almost out of time, so I have to ask you our last question. And we ask every single guest this. Steve Jobs famously gave every attendee at his memorial a copy of Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. What book would you want to pass on to your memorial guest?
That's a great question. Well, I think I'd have to go back to The Power of Now because inside of presence, anything is possible. And if we can simply support one another to get out of our heads and out of our stories and come into alignment with that which is true and that which is now, then in the now, we can create anything and we can be anything for one another. And that field of infinite potential is really appealing to me.
Well said. Patrick Durkin, thank you for adding your 10 most influential books to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's library of recommendations.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Before we close, listening to Patrick talk about his 10 best list reminds me that transformation doesn't always come from sacred texts. Sometimes it comes from Dr. Seuss, or a voice that sounds suspiciously like your own. So consider this. What if your life is already leaving you clues in the books you return to, the ideas that won't leave you alone, the ones that make you feel more you? Because maybe the real spiritual path isn't about following the light. Maybe it's about recognizing where it's already shining. To learn more about Patrick Durkin's story, his book Flow, From Pure and Safe Water to Higher States of Consciousness, and his free hydration course, which we haven't talked about, but you can find out more on his website, thewellnessenterprise.com. Yes, it is a
Yes.
.com, isn't it?
It is.
Good. That's it for this week. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer. I'll be back at the same time next week with another 10 best interview for the No BS Spiritual Book Club. Till then, it's goodbye from me. Thank you again to Patrick Durkin.
Thanks, Sandie. It was a pleasure to be with you.
If today's conversation sparked your curiosity, you'll love our other shows. The Synergy Sessions, where leading-edge thinkers collide in bold, unscripted dialogues that ignite new possibilities. Between Realms and Reason, where we journey into the mysterious consciousness, energy, and the hidden layers of reality, where science converges with spirit in ways you've never imagined. And the No BS Spiritual Book Club, where leading-edge new thought speakers, teachers, authors, and luminaries who've walked this path before you share the 10 books that had the biggest impact on their life journey. All 3 shows are available on YouTube, Spotify, Substack, and all major podcast platforms. For more information, visit sedgbeer.com. That's SEDGBEER.com.